right. So, kicking it off with the first iteration of 10-minute talks with me, Coach Justin, and
And
my
me,
co host here.
Coach Caitlin here. Today, guys, we're going to be talking about protein. All right. So, Justin, lay it on me. Why is protein important? Like, why are we talking about it today?
All right. Well, I like to eat chicken. No, just kidding. Protein is a big thing in the nutrition world, especially when somebody's trying to get either fat loss results, muscle building results, performance results, because it is the thing, it is the underlying nutrient that forms the basis for our lean tissue, right? So basically, if you want to have a healthy amount and a healthy quality of muscle tissue, right, then you're going to have to hit a certain amount of protein in your diet, right? You're going to have to consume a certain amount of protein, preferably quality protein,
Yeah.
right?
And protein is going to be that macronutrient that helps with rebuilding and repairing of the muscle. And the reason why muscle is so important, guys, is because the more muscle you have, the more calories you're going to be able to burn at rest, which is going to mean that you have a faster metabolism and you can get better fat loss results and you can actually sustain those results long term. And none of that is able to happen unless you're giving your muscles the proper building blocks from that protein.
100%. Yeah, I mean that's like step number one, right? When you talk about nutrition, right? Specifically nutrition. And I think where most people go a little bit awry, or they kind of stray from the path of understanding why it's so important, is because they think maybe they're going to get big from eating a lot of protein, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if I eat too much meat, if I eat too many protein shakes, right? Whatever, like I'm going to get too big. And the fact of the matter is, what Caitlin's talking about is, if you're truly pushing your body in a training sense, right, and you're making sure that you're breaking that muscle, right, which is what we have to do. We ultimately have to destroy the muscle so we can rebuild it bigger, faster, stronger. That protein is the prime ingredient for that rebuilding process. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I agree with you. So many people look at protein, they think, oh, well, I don't want to get big and bulky like a bodybuilder. And that just has to go with just the way that protein was marketed. Like you would visualize protein and you think like a whey protein shake that a big old bodybuilder is drinking, but that's not the case. Like protein isn't just essential for muscle and metabolism, but it's also essential for growth and repair of all of our tissues. So it's important for longevity as well.
Yeah. No, you're 100%. So like you said earlier, metabolism being kind of the key factor here that most people are paying attention to, right? And while we're dieting down, we know our metabolism is going to try to adapt because we're humans and we want to survive. So that protein being at a higher amount, right, than like what the government would recommend, for example, would be advantageous to keep that metabolic rate, humming, keep it going in the right direction, so that we're not actually adapting as quickly, right? And like Caitlin said, that metabolism, that repair and the recovery that happens takes a lot of extra calories, which is why you ultimately end up burning more calories from consuming adequate protein, strength training, things like that. Things you'll hear us talk about, more often in the future. But also on the longevity side, right? Hair, skin, nails, lining the digestive tracts, a lot of enzymatic things that go on in the body, right? Me and Caitlin could nerd out on that stuff. We're not going to go there today, but again, it's a super, super essential ingredient in your health. So Caitlin, how do we go about like actually consuming and hitting a certain protein number?
So I think that starts with how much protein should you be hitting? And really, it's going to depend on the person, right? But a good area to follow would be 1 gram per pound of your goal body weight, or of your current body weight if you're not trying to lose a significant amount of weight. And how we do that is we break it up throughout the day, right? You don't want to go and eat like 150 grams of protein all at once, because that's one, overwhelming, but it's also going to feel really disgusting in your body. But you want to focus on eating more whole foods and more higher quality foods, mainly animal proteins. So, you have your animal proteins, your poultry, your chicken, turkey, eggs, egg whites, you have beef and steak and pork, fish, You have like certain dairies like Greek yogurt and cottage cheese, as well as high quality protein supplements. And of course, quality being the difference maker. But like inevitably, it's not that hard to hit your protein goal. You just actively have to try to hit it, because if you don't, it's really hard not to hit it, because our world is so full of carbs and fats and we pay less attention to that protein.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And the big thing to remember about like why a gram per pound of goal body weight, right? Like
Yeah.
I get asked that question sometimes, or like, why does this have to be such a high number relative to like where they're already, what they're already eating? Is generally because from a simplistic point of view, we're also always constantly breaking down and building up the proteins in our system, right? And in our muscle tissue. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that ratio is more toward the building side, and that we got enough coming in, because we're constantly going to be breaking that down, right? That's what we do to live and to move and to recover. And so what Caitlin's saying is a gram per pound of body weight is at least where we know the person is going to be able to sustain that higher amount of incoming rather than getting broken down, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, when you're eating adequate protein too, another thing that you don't hear spoken about enough is how much it helps with satiation. Like you're not going to be as hungry as you usually are if you're in a calorie deficit, or if you're eating less in order to lose weight. That protein is going to keep you full, and it's also going to help to prevent cravings and keep your blood sugar more stable throughout the day. So you're just going to feel better.
Yeah, no, that I would have totally completely missed that. Yeah, I think, like you said, just from a feeling good standpoint, right? Like not being so hungry when you're dieting down and all that kind of stuff. Protein's a huge deal. Plus, you don't really use it for energy like you do carbs and fats. So the calories, while they are still calories and they still count, don't get me wrong, they just aren't seen by the body in the same exact manner, right? And so, like Caitlin says, because protein takes a while to digest and it's very satiating, just adding a protein to anything that you eat, right? Let's take a real practical example. Let's say you're going to eat a bagel in the morning, right? It would behoove you to add eggs or a protein shake or Greek yogurt or something along those lines to that meal, because it's actually going to slow the digestion down of that entire meal, not spike your blood sugar as much. So now you're not going to be craving those carbohydrates again in an hour or whatever. And so now we've kind of smoothed out that eating process overall.
Yeah, that actually goes off of, there's actually one little hack that I have my clients do generally, and it has to do with like, make it a non-negotiable that every single time you have a meal or a snack that you have some form of quality protein of the sources that I listed earlier, and also make sure that you eat that protein source first, especially if you have a problem with overeating, because if you eat that protein source first, you're going to be more full and you're going to be less likely to overeat on the other things that could add to that calorie load for your day.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like I said, the order can definitely help out. So Caitlin, what do you do as far as, like, let's say your go-to one or two go-to meals when you are thinking about, hitting a certain protein number?
Yeah. So first thing right off the bat is chicken and rice and vegetables. Like super easy. It's something I have every single night. And I know it sounds really basic, but like chicken has a very high amount of protein. So like it has about 7 grams of protein per ounce. So if you think you're having like 3 ounces of chicken, right there is already 21 grams of protein. And if you keep adding on to that, like you could have a lot of it. And if you have it throughout the day, plus you can make it really tasty. Like you can change it up with different macro friendly sauces and seasonings and things like that. And you can really add it to anything. Like if you don't like rice, cool, do it with potatoes, cool, do it with a tortilla, make a sandwich, do something cool. I also really lean heavily on eggs and egg whites because again, super simple, super easy to cook. And like you can put egg whites in a lot of different dishes. So like I make protein oatmeal in the morning where I add a little bit of protein powder into it as well, but I add egg whites too to pump up that protein, and you can't even taste them in the oatmeal. So it's really good. What about yourself?
You're such a bodybuilder, Caitlin.
I am, I did bodybuilding for a while, so that's probably where that comes from.
Yeah, see, that's not a surprise. Chicken, broccoli, and rice. You still got it going on.
Yeah, and egg whites and oatmeal
Um,
too.
so yeah, the egg whites and oatmeal, actually, I that's a good reminder. I need to kind of lean back towards that way. I used to do that a lot too, because the oatmeal kind of cooks the egg whites a little bit, so
Yeah,
it
and it gives
adds
a
to
good
the bulk of
texture
the food.
too.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Like you said, I mean, you're not gonna make like eggy oatmeal. It's not really doesn't really taste like that. Just tastes a little bit thicker and a little bit different texture. But as far as myself, I lean pretty heavily on red meats in general, right? So I eat a
Mhm.
lot of ground bison, I eat a lot of ground beef. Um, I am also a hunter, so I'll eat, and I wouldn't say this is a lot, it's very seasonal. So like duck breast or deer, stuff like that. But yeah, generally I'll go with like ground beef and a bowl full of mixed berries. And I know that sounds like it, yeah, if your meal sound like a bodybuilder, this is definitely sounds very bland. But again, it does the trick for me. Like the ground beef, you know, just by itself with maybe a little bit of ketchup or something on it, and then the mixed berries over in another bowl, like you know, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, whatever, and it kind of hits everything that I'm looking for. And because my
Yeah,
ground beef is a little bit fattier generally, so like 93%, maybe 90%, that is my fat source as well,
yeah.
right? Um, and then it's kind of secondarily, really anything that I can make taste sweet. So like Greek yogurt or
Mhm.
um, cottage cheese. I'm not really a huge cottage cheese fan, but I have done that before from time to time. But Greek yogurt, mainly with a little bit of protein powder, like you say, can go a long way. And then you can add, you know, pretty much whatever you want to it, depending on, you know, what your other macro goals are. But I do think is important to say as well before we end this up is don't be afraid of a little bit fattier protein sources,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. So many
mean,
people fear the
yeah,
fat.
go ahead.
It's not good. You don't want to fear that fat, guys. Fats are essential for hormone production. And those red meats and those fattier meats, they're tasty too. And they have so many micronutrients in them.
100%. Like I said, so I mean, like you got to do what's aligned with your, you know, macro goals or whatever. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't be stuck in the leanest possible sources at all times, every time, because like Kayla says, you're missing out on a lot of good stuff. So,
Oh, yeah.
is there anything that we're missing here, Caitlin?
No, I don't think so. But, final thing that I like to say, guys, is, calories are going to determine if the scale moves up or down, but protein's always going to determine what you look like when you get there.
100%. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. Um, but I appreciate everyone who has watched, will watch. Leave a comment if you have another question. Me and Caitlin will get around to those as best we can, and be on the lookout for more 10-minute talks.
Yeah. We'll see you guys.